Hi, my name is Mark Walker and I'm the editorial director of the Fintech Times. And we're here with the Payments Power 50 webinar talking about AI in payments. I'm going to start off by asking my panelists to give a quick introduction to who they are and who they work for. And just because of the order I have it on the screen, I'm going to start with you, David.
Well, hi, Mark. Great to be here. Look forward to the conversation today. I'm CEO of Global Businesses for Pong. We're a global fintech focused on cross-border business payments. So it's not focused on domestic, not consumer. Started out in e-commerce, now work with enterprise clients around the world, meeting the challenges of cross-border payments.
Fantastic. And then Thomas, give us a quick intro.
Yeah, thanks. So Thomas B. Normann, I lead our digital services products at Paymentology, so global issuer processor, and focusing basically on all digital services for banks, but now also on AI and AI-driven development in the organization.
Fantastic. And last but not least, William, give us a quick intro.
Hi, everyone, and looking forward to the debate today as well. Willem Wellinghoff, I'm the Chief Compliance Officer and UK Chair for an inclusive payments platform called Ecommpay, and we are focused on global payments processing for merchants, and we're acquiring UK and EU.
Fantastic. And I think what we've got here is we've got a nice section of different people with kind of different slight variants of viewpoints on the sort of the AI phenomenon that we're seeing at the moment. Now, whether we obviously call it hype or what it is, what I'd like to kind of start off with, and maybe I'll come back to you, David, for this, is, you know, where are we on that AI hype cycle? Because we've talked about machine learning for many years, but AI is kind of a newfangled hype word that we brought in. Whereabouts are we at the moment?
I think it varies depending on where you're looking, frankly. So there are some areas where it is very much in the background, and it's a powerful tool that is starting to get traction, but it's sort of working through complex background issues. I'm sure we're going to talk quite a bit about fraud and risk management today, and that's sort of a good example of that. And then on the other hand, you've got agentic AI coming to the fore with e-commerce getting transformed potentially, where people are actually making purchases all through an AI agent, and that's very visible and exciting, and that's a clear disruption in the model that's existed before. So I think it's a very broad tool and set of capabilities that will emerge in differing speeds in different areas, but it's going to have a broad impacts across payments for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, William, sort of coming to you on that point that David mentioned about sort of use in fraud. And I guess, 5 years ago, we were all using machine learning to do data crunching and, using non-standard data and stuff, but it never really sparked, the world's interest in fraud and everything. Why do you think now that we've come to the word AI, it's kind of heightened everybody's senses on how is this working?
Well, it's a great question, actually. So, I mean, if we look back 5 years ago, the discussions, even with the regulator in the UK, where machine learning was being considered only at the capacity of the age of a 7 years old child. And look where we are today, 5 years on, it's accelerated quite rapidly, where AI and machine learning obviously is able to not only ingest large quantities of data and structured data, but it's able to actually analyze it against multiple frameworks to give an output. Are we at the point yet where we can let it run its course and fully automate and just rely upon the decision? I don't think we're there yet. I think it still requires some very, very, very detailed kind of validation and verification and kind of user input. But we've accelerated 5 years at such a pace where I think if you're not considering AI within your organization, whether it's at customer service level or operational efficiencies, and even in our case, fraud and financial crime just generally, you're quickly are going to be by the side of the road looking at this and thinking, why did I miss out on these opportunities? But I think fraud detection, is a very good use case for AI, because there are so many different data points in the payments journey, whether it's us as payment services firm or a merchant. And all those data points are actually really invaluable pieces of information that, when strung together and run through very detailed models, the AI models can learn a significant amount of a significant global processing capability, and that's where it's really exciting in my view.
Yeah.
And
I guess,
then
Thomas, from
yeah.
your point of view on the product development sort of side of things, have you seen a similar sort of leap forward from, you know, what you were using as a product development point of view for machine learning into what we're now using as AI? Has it radically changed product development in the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, so machine learning was obviously very interesting, and to an extent is still today. But where that was more niche in some ways, AI is really all over the place, for good and for bad. I mean, we're getting to the stage where people are creating documents using AI. Other people are using AI to summarize it, and limited values being generated. But we're trying to be cognizant of that in Paymentology. So we're trying to find ways to utilize this the best way possible, whether it is sentiment analysis on support tickets or for product insights. We've just launched our first product team. So we've launched a new product team with just a tech lead and one single developer that will use AI first development and build an all new product. And that's, that's a bit experimenting on the side, limiting the risk and exposure, and use this as a way to learn to see what real productivity gains can we have from this perspective.
One thing
it's kind of interesting, I guess, David.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you
David,
contrast the risk view and fraud, risk view versus the product view. Because I think on the product side, like Thomas is saying, it's like it's innovation, and you're kind of harnessing it in positive ways. Reality is, I think, on the compliance and risk side, we're actually playing defense more than offense. And it's 50% of fraud now is driven by using AI. I saw a study just come out which actually said even trained people, it's a 50-50 chance of whether they will be able to spot an AI generated face. And so it's, I think this is where we have a challenge as regulated financial institutions, that we work in a structured, regulated environment. We are innovative, but it's within a very structured, thoughtful way. Whereas the bad actors, this is pure innovation. It is so easy to pick up AI tools and just do something. So
they are basically running with a different rule deck, aren't they? They're not running with the same rule deck that you guys are playing with.
Yeah, exactly. So we are obviously very innovative businesses. We all want to work at pace and deliver good products to our customers. But at the same time, we've got regulatory requirements to maintain and adhere to. And good businesses obviously are very much working within those parameters. But criminals, or kind of the bad actors, they have no laws to adhere to. They break the systems using all this innovation. They are able to gain access to information, biometric information, at such a little cost. And we're even seeing kind of scenarios now, very interestingly, where it is crime as a service, where people are selling rule books and playbooks on how to become the most optimized criminal in fraud and even identity moving. And then it's quite sad that we have to effectively try and protect revenue and protect business from a compliance perspective. And that's where I would say artificial intelligence is a strong defense model and mechanism.
And I think that was kind of my point was going to make, is that it is such a fine balance, isn't it? Because, obviously, as payment companies want to embrace a new technology because there's opportunities there. And I wonder what the bigger driver is. Is the bigger driver, merchants and consumers demanding more efficiencies, better cost, and against the business itself trying to drive internal efficiencies? And as you sort of said earlier, William, it's kind of like, if you're not adopting this, you're going to get left behind. So you can't stand still, but how far do you push forward? And I guess, from your point of view, Thomas, from a product development point of view, maybe putting words in your mouth, but you're probably ready to go right to the nth degree and say, yeah, we just automate everything and everything will be an agent and no problems whatsoever. Because actually, in its purest form, it is actually relatively safe, but without the backed actors involved. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, but I mean, the opportunities are endless, and it can be also overwhelming, right? Because not a day goes by before you read a new article on this new tool promises this, or this tool will help you do that with AI, and it's all built on top of OpenAI or Claude or whatever, and then just figuring out what to even bother spending time testing out can be difficult. But we have made a few specific changes. So we've set up an internal automation team that will be utilizing AI. We're setting up this new product team. But the point is that they will have the time and focus to actually figure out what works, what doesn't work. And obviously they work closely with our security and compliance teams to make sure that we can guardrail this so it doesn't spin off completely. And obviously they do it a bit on the side of the core processing platform. So while all developers have access to OpenAI and GitHub Copilot, we still have 4i principles and pull request reviews, etc. Whereas these other, let's say, pilot teams, they are allowed to experiment a bit more. So kind of an internal sandbox, so to say.
Yeah, I'm getting a feeling of where everybody is on the risk versus reward at the moment. I guess, David, coming to you as kind of like the sort of CEO on the top level, what from running a company point of view, how do you balance those two sort of teams, and what's your sort of thought process on where should you put most of your ideas and your resources into?
I think for me, it's like with any technology. When you're looking at running the business, you got to say what are the biggest challenges, the biggest opportunities, and focus the efforts, because you can't do everything, and there are so many ways you can use AI. It's such a broadly applicable technology. You've got to set very clear priorities as a business around where to deploy, what has most impact, and that depends on the nature of the business, and particularly. So, for example, for us, we are cross-border business payments, and in cross-border business payments, this is in the payments world, this is the place that really is driven by compliance and risk. AML, the regulations get tighter and tighter. You've got not just financial regulations, you've got data regulations. That is the foundation, and that's the differentiation. To be the trusted cross-border payments partner to businesses, that's the number one thing. So for us, it's very clear that's the primary focus, and partly also because the bad actors, they're going to be using it. We've got to keep up. We've got to be faster than them. Yes, there are operational savings we can make, and we're using it in software development, but that's, we're getting 15% product, 20% maybe productivity improvements there, which is great, but that doesn't change the business. What changes the business is ensuring we maintain those compliance and risk standards, manage AML. And that's where our big investments have been over the last year or two, to say everything from KYC to transaction monitoring. We've got other technology changes affecting the business with real-time payments, which also means real-time fraud, and therefore transaction monitoring. You've got to be able to make smart, intelligent decisions in milliseconds. Do I stop this payment or not? And that's kind of the standard we got to be getting to. It wasn't that long ago we had the luxury of time. We don't have that luxury anymore. So for me, for our business, that's the number one area.
I guess, William, from your perspective, I see you nodding along to a lot of that. What's your perspective when of not any particular regulator, I don't want to name and shame it, but if the regulator is actually behind your level of technology as a payments provider, how do you offer the correct regulation and provide everything we're talking about, but also, balance the fact that you're probably actually getting more information than the regulator actually knows what to do with, and how can you balance that?
I wouldn't underestimate regulators, because even regulators are exploring the power of AI. I mean, some have even dedicated accelerators within the regulators that are looking at AI. The FCA being a good example of that, with their partnership with NVIDIA. But obviously, when they're regulating the market, everyone is at a different pace, and everyone is at a different journey of AI adoption. I think, with that comes a lot of fragmentation, and especially when you're looking at cross-border, as David was talking to, some regulated markets or even some areas are actually very far along the journey of things like innovation, technology, and how that interacts with regulation. And some are very, not even starting on that development, or less developed. And with that comes the fragmentation on a cross-border level. And that's where it starts getting really quite complex, because you, as an organization wanting to do the right thing, obviously implement good governance around things like AI, your risk aspects. How is the data flowing into the model? Is it going into a black box? How are you controlling the black box? To all of those kinds of things, and a manual verification of all of that. And I think, the real kind of important phase of that is when you're working with regulators, is being quite open and transparent with them on how you're using technologies to enhance certain things. Obviously, I think it very much depends on the type of use case that you're going in. But if in fraud, AML, David mentioned, onboarding is a critical one, and that's largely driven by consumer demand and expectation, because they want access to financial services now. They don't want to wait 24 hours anymore. They want it now. So there is a great angle there. Fraud in our world, payments, when we're acquiring payments for merchants, we've got to analyze in milliseconds whether that payment is potentially fraudulent or not. And we've done a lot of we've built our own fraud systems. We do testing using AI and machine learning and all types of different data models. And we've actually seen that we've been able to reduce false positives by 65% as a consequence of using those deep innovative technologies like AI. But again, it's driven by a different angle, is consumer demand. So, as David mentioned, you've got to onboard in, very quick timeframes. No longer is it acceptable where a customer would want to be onboarded in 24 hours. No, they want access to financial services now. They want it just like that. So being able to optimize through automation, AI capabilities is just a necessity. But when working with regulators, it's being open, transparent, being cognizant of how the frameworks in other countries are evolving, and being very early on engaged with the regulators in those markets if you have a presence there.
Yeah. And I guess, Thomas, from your perspective, obviously we touched on there the idea of having the systems in place to be able to monitor all these things. Has that become an integral part in the product development sort of scale now, as in a sort of a plan, check, do, and sort of review type of process? Or has that always been in place?
I think a core framework that has been in place, but it's, let's say, easier to work more efficiently and analyze insights more easily, refine requirements more easily. So it helps us. But I think that's more, to David's point previously, that's more on the 10-15% improvement in efficiency kind of level, where we see more more help is actually on, fraud, transaction analysis, to see trends. We've just had a case the last few weeks. We've seen a new fraud pattern that rise, and we were able to use AI in different ways to review the pattern and notify a lot of our clients, because we could see this happening first with one client and then 2 more clients, and then we're able to see or connect the dots and start, warning issuers and chasing different rules, helping reduce the fraud to spread to other clients of us.
Yeah, David.
Just add something here, because I think often in conversations around AI there is hype, there is excitement, and I think what gets overlooked sometimes is that AI depends on the data it's got to work with, and the key issue is actually how do we get more data? So if we want to leverage AI properly, we've got to make sure we're maximizing the data we can feed into it. And that's where I think ISO 20022 is actually, it's going to take time, but enrich data in this, Swift messaging system and in other systems. We're AI native. We built our own end-to-end global network. We've got close to 70 licenses around the world. So we've built our own rich data infrastructure. Now that messaging, Swift messaging is getting upgraded, as that data really gets formatted and used correctly, that's going to be powerful. And I think the one thing that interested in everyone's thoughts on, but to me is probably one of the most exciting areas that is just being scratched the surface of right now, is federated consortium models for AI around data sharing and risk management. And there are some cases, Swift and Google have done something. The MAS in Singapore has actually set up a consortium for all of the banks within Singapore. And we're starting to see some movement there. But I think that's going to be a game changer. Because if you think someone touched on it before, I think it was Willem touched on it, the bad actors, they're sharing tips with each other. They've got an incredibly decentralized but very effective network. Where financial institutions are still working in silos. We've got to find a way to work as a network, managing the data privacy, data security issues, and all of those complexities, if we're going to really compete as this goes forward.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, David. And it's very interesting because we all rely upon each other to allow payments to actually happen, whether it's the schemes, whether it's banks, whether it's ourselves as regulated businesses. We all depend on each other, but yet we're also fixated on never releasing information because we think it's confidential to us and it holds commercial value. But if we're looking at it from a fighting the crime, or global serious organized crime agencies, the only way you can actually really target that is by proper data sharing capabilities and working together in that. And as you say, David, AI thrives off data. It needs data in order to make decisions. But equally, what I have found is AI also needs some very well structured instructions in order to process the capabilities and the output that you need. Without it, or if you think you can just string one simple sentence together expecting it to do miracles, it won't do it. So it requires to know what role it acts in. It needs to know what you're trying to get to, and then the outputs that you want. And that's where then the data enrichment comes in to learn it all. And I think, where some of the where people are getting a little bit more prudent about AI, or why are they a little bit more nervous or skeptical about it, is where is my data going to? Right. So if I put it in an open AI model or a Gemini or any other AI model, where is that data going to? Is it going to governments? Is it going to, is it being released to, any third party who may have access to that data when they're putting a query in? And I think that's where good governance comes back in and kind of overall good risk management from our perspective. But again, I couldn't I couldn't agree more with what David is mentioning. That data sharing consortium is absolutely critical.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think you're right.
It's
if
it's
we
the
are afraid
interesting.
of,
Good, Thomas. Yeah.
if we're afraid, concerned about what the fraudsters are doing today, just before joining here, I read one article on how fraudsters are definitely using AI actively, but mostly playing around, learning how to utilize it so that in 2 years' time, when it's really, it acts standalone as a senior developer and QA and tech lead, they really know how to build malicious software.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. And as you sort of mentioned earlier, that you just an exact point of our data sharing sort of concept. You said earlier we noticed this pattern and we saw this pattern. We started telling all our customers about it. Well, that's great, and you have a lot of customers. But wouldn't it be more powerful if you told the whole industry about it so that they could tell all their customers as well? And I think, as we said, this unfortunately is not a technology problem. This is a human problem. And it's a human, groups of people coming together and deciding on we need to do this together to fight this, which is historically quite tricky for humans
Yeah,
to do.
I think Willem's point is a very good one. It's, the governance around this is critical, and the governance plays into then, I think what I see happening on the regulator side is one, yeah, they're absolutely concerned about where is the data going. And if you look at the trend in regulation legislation over the last 5 years, huge increase in legislation around data security, data sovereignty. The second aspect I think regulators are going to get increasingly concerned about is, AI is a black box. Who really knows how the algorithm is working? And can you really justify the decisions rather than just accept the decisions that are getting made? So I think this is where I think it's incredibly exciting and powerful tool, but I think internally we're focused on saying let's walk before we run. And I think the overall trend here is using certainly for us is leverage AI to automate a lot of the KYC, increase the straight through processing rates, weed out the false positives so that actually your human resource can actually be applied to the higher level, tougher judgment decisions. And so people get very excited about use of agents and real autonomous agents. But I think certainly when it comes to our business and how we look at it, it's kind of walk and then run. And that gradual shift is going to mean a lot of refocusing roles, refocusing skills within the compliance and risk teams. So it's not so much operational work, it's really high value analytical judgment making, which is what they're going to be required to do. So these things take time. So even if we have the best tools, we still need to have the organization that can use those tools in the right way.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's
totally.
kind of a key sort of thing that you sort of mentioned there is that's kind of where we are at the moment, where everyone's kind of, I wouldn't say comfortable, but everyone's aware that we're using AI in this way, this is how it's going. But everyone keeps throwing that agentic AI in there. And some of the conversation we just had here is about, well, and I think it was Willem, you said, it still needs to be told what it is. It still needs to be told what it is. But that is the scary and the amazing thing about the concept of agentic AI is that you just need to give it a couple of parameters and then it's autonomous. And so we're into the future conversation now. How scary is the future going to be?
Well, I think as compliance professionals are going to have a very interesting time being able to not only do KYC and KYB, it's also going to be KYA, actually knowing who your agent is. Is it one instance? Is it multiple instances of the same agent or a different agent? To what extent does it know the individual's personal preferences? Could they be a bad actor? Could they go rogue? So there are so many, parameters to it. Actually, to me, I find it very exciting to some degree because, it's such a fast evolving space, and compliance professionals, they can't be looking at, there was an age old mindset that compliance professionals were business professionals. So, and I think that's come along now where they're more focusing on commercial enablers. But I think, more is it going to be, you're protecting your revenue, you're protecting your business to actually, you've got to be very product and technologically minded as a compliance professional to be able to analyze these particular patterns. And I find that very exciting as to where that is going. However, with that excitement, I'm also very, very worried about, the bad actors using agentic AI. I mean, Thomas mentioned it. It's very easy for me to clone my face, record my voice, and have me act in 15 different languages, and I don't have to pay an awful lot for that. Now, imagine that in such a circumstance where it knows my preferences. I've given all the ideas, and I say, well, look, I want to book a holiday. I want to go to St. Lucia. I want to stay in a 4-star hotel. Here are my card details. Now go off and make the booking and, organize my activities, for the next 2 weeks when I'm there. Now that's the scary thought of what agentic AI is going to do in kind of commerce transactions. I think on the flip side, if I'm looking at it from a, internal back end of how can we support our business, we could have additional compliance agents being able to support the business on an ongoing basis. So, and whatever business you look in, the simple economics are, we want to increase revenue, keep our costs low because that drives profitability. And obviously everyone's looking at AI as how can we make our costs more effective, right? And that's where I think agentic AI in compliance teams actually helps boost your capabilities at the same cost level. And I think that's where I find it very exciting to boost them to.
It's interesting. I see you nodding along there, Thomas, a bit about that. How do you see the sort of the roles of the product teams and the compliance teams sort of morphing when it gets into agentic AI? Do you have to become a compliance expert, and as does Willem has to become a product expert?
I mean, that's a nice thing with AI, right? No one needs to be an expert on anything because you can just lean on AI. But on a serious note, I mean, we're better friends now with our compliance team because they have made use of AI in different ways, speeding up, a lot of the questions and the processes, and it makes it easier because compliance is less of, a hurdle stopping you from moving forward as fast as you want because they can play along a bit faster, which is, great. But what I am quite curious to see is actually how banks will handle this, especially with, agentic payments. So Visa and MasterCard have released their specification for agentic payments, and a lot of the security relies on tokenization. So the agent will be given a specific payment token, so it's bound to that one. And without boring you with too many details, but the tokenization infrastructure was basically initiated with Apple Pay and Google Pay, and a lot of the banks are running on internal systems or legacy processors who basically did what was needed to do to get Apple Pay up and running. And then a ton of stuff has happened. It's some 11, 12 years since the first tokenization specs came out. And I know that a lot of banks have, they've added following the mandates, but not in a holistic way, right? And now all of a sudden, that infrastructure, which for some of the banks is just something they did because it was mandated and they wanted to do Apple Pay, that's now the core security layer for agentic payments. That's what they need to utilize to consider, should we allow this token to be issued? Should we put these restrictions on that token? Should we allow this tokenized transaction to be authorized? And for the issuers that are doing this on legacy systems, I think their risk and compliance team will have, they will not be out of a job for very soon.
Yeah. I mean, just to add on to that, just to add on to that, is there a good use of agentic AI? And I do believe there is, right? So forgetting for the moment the bad actors, given we're very obsessive, about financial inclusion at Ecommpay, if you look at how people who traditionally can't access or interact with financial services or payments on a day-to-day basis because, for example, they have a disability in which they can't actually process a payment online. I think this is where agentic AI could actually be very positive and beneficial to that community where they wouldn't ordinarily be excluded from financial services. So I think there is some good to take away from that too.
Yeah, there are good uses for agentic AI. I mean, the one that certainly grabs my attention is, cross-border flows are complex, a lot of different ways payments get routed, different variables, cost, speed, etc. And then you've got sort of large corporations managing global treasury and liquidity and FX exposure. So there are those kind of areas sort of within a corporation that I think agentic AI can be very, very powerful, drive a lot of efficiency and financial benefit. And again, businesses, it's the bottom line. So there are ways to do it. And I think maybe there's something there in the sense that when it's using agents within an organization, within one controlled space, that's a much safer place. It's where they're at the interfaces is where there's a lot more uncertainty around, okay, what decisions are they going to be making? And actually, from an inclusion point of view, I know there are some challenges around AI and is the model trained in a way that is actually even-handed when it comes to different groups, different ethnic groups, in terms of how they're being processed within the algorithm. So I think there absolutely this huge power in agentic AI. Some areas where it's got risk.
Yeah, the bias. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the unconscious bias, which is obviously, that's the way bias works, isn't it? Years and years of doing things in a certain way, collecting lots of data, but ignoring all the other things that have happened. And if you train all of these models on that same data, then it's going to assume the same thing. It's a tricky one. I guess that is where some people are kind of talking about the agentic AI theme becoming more self-aware to be able to realize that there's a bias in the data and to look at it. And that's, I guess, a lot of what I was thinking about as you guys were talking is it's in autonomous cars, they invented a level of autonomy from 1 to 5. And so they then were working between those things. And I think we're coming to a similar sort of point when we start looking at agentic AI. We're going to have an agent which has got a level 1 sort of clearance, which basically means it's just one up on an ordinary AI that's allowed to make a few decisions on its own. And then there's sort of like we're trying to work towards level 5, where they almost have no involvement from a human in that type of thing as well. But a staged approach seemed to have worked relatively well in the autonomous car market, and potentially that could work in the agentic AI market as well. Having said that again comes back to our original thing about sharing data, sharing ideas, sharing, ways of working. That only works if everyone adopts the same standard. And as with most of these conversations, I always find that when we talk about them, we always fall back onto the thing of, but are the humans actually going to get together and agree on this? And it's not about whether two agentic AIs can talk to each other and decide what to do. You've got this almost like a joke theme where I can see two agents talking to each other saying, are these humans ever going to sort themselves out and let's just do this?
Or even, as what we've seen before, develop their own language that we don't even understand anymore.
Right? Precisely, and probably criticize us in the means of doing it. It depends how far you want to get into the sci-fi sort of thing. So I guess we're sort of coming to the sort of end of things now. I guess now's the sort of time. We talked a little bit about the future, what it could look like and that sort of stuff. Maybe as a sort of final thought, we kind of go around the team and maybe give me a little bit of an idea of what you think's going to be going to be the big things we're talking about in the next sort of 6 months, maybe year and a half, and what's the progress going to be to the next stages that we just talked about. And just because of the order that we went into the first place, I'm going to go back to David and start off with you. You're the CEO as well, so you should already have the helicopter view. The strategy should be all in place. You know exactly what you're doing, yeah?
Yes, yeah. If only life was like that, yes. I mean, these are interesting times for sure. A lot of things changing. I do think, yeah, what we're going to see really get a lot of attention in the short term is this. I think Willem mentioned the case. Here's a profile of a holiday I want. Go buy me the holiday. I mean, it's that the smart consumer transactions. That is going to be highly visible. It's going to touch so many people, and it's going to bring to life the idea of what is agentic AI. So I think that's going to be a very powerful force that actually, on the one hand, you've got an unprecedented level of investment has gone into AI. I mean, you look every week, certainly, if not every day, you are hearing of these huge multi-billion dollar investment plays. So it's being driven from the business side incredibly hard and fast. I think this is going to bring it to life from the consumer side. I think on the business side, when it comes to our business, I think the big thing is going to be, it's an arms race, and to see, are we able to keep up with the bad actors and actually overtake them? And I think there will be exciting breakthroughs in that. I'm starting to see it. We're certainly having success. I'm talking to other companies who are, so I think it's possible. But I think the optimist in me would say it's not going to be 6 months or 12 months, but in the medium term, that we can solve the collaboration challenge. And if we can solve the collaboration challenge and everyone recognize, we need to be maximizing the data, maximizing the value of the data by appropriate collaboration, federated learning models, then that will be a huge breakthrough.
Absolutely. And I guess, Thomas, from your perspective, what do you think was going to be the main focuses going forward?
On a very high level, I think 2024 was a year of discovery. Nearly 25 has been widespread experimentation, or year of experimentation. I think 2026, on a large scale, that will be a year of really using AI productively on a different level than what we've seen before. From our perspective at Paymentology, I think the agentic payments, Visa and MasterCard, they're doing some pilots now. We're very interesting to see how the commercial rollout of that will be, because that will significantly change basically the whole ecosystem of payments. So obviously something that we're following closely. And then, I just hope that sometime in 2026 that we don't wake up and it feels like an episode of Black Mirror.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, Willem, from your point of view, when is the Black Mirror event going to happen?
Oh, it's already happening. No, but in all reality, I think there is some skepticism that this is again one of those 1999 to 2000 kind of Internet of Things kind of progression, and everyone's using the buzzword of AI. Personally, I think AI is here to stay. I think agentic AI in commerce will be a real thing. But I think for us, if I'm looking at it from my compliance angle and kind of the regulatory sphere, what I would like to hope, and David, it comes to some degree to what your data sharing consortium comes to, is that regulators are doing the same in analyzing the standards needed to adopt AI models and regulation on a global basis that is interoperable. And I think that's really the most important point. And the auditability and the risk decisions that your modeling takes has to be evidenced. Now, kind of then looking further to that, if we're looking at agentic AI, are the protocols upon which we are currently building, are they sufficient enough to be able to develop the protocols on it? And I think that's where it's going to be very interesting, is what are the kind of technical protocols in the future on how you build agentic AI and how you are able to audit all of that, because that's not yet well developed.
Fantastic. I think that's a great place to end. As I said at the beginning of this, before we started recording, this could have gone for hours, and there are so many other levels we could have talked about. I didn't even throw the quantum bomb in there, but there's plenty of other things to do. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with me here on the Payments Power 50 webinar.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic. Okay.